Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to show you the workflow of how to create 3D scan data and then put that scan data into a game engine. So first of all, let's just look at the images in which I have here. So I have taken some photos, and as we can see, these photos have been taken on my phone. Now, just a side note, whenever you're taking photos, it's going to be best to use a proper camera like a DSLR as opposed to a smartphone as I have. And the reason being is, if we look at some of these images here, you can see that there's various different levels of contrast within the images, and what this will create is incorrect texture information when it goes to projecting these images in terms of a texture. So with that in mind, go ahead and use a DSLR if you have one to create your images. If not, then just use whichever camera you have handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drag all of these pictures into Photoscan, and once we have that, I'm going to go to Workflow, and we have this option that says Align Photos. So inside here we have a few options. We have the accuracy, so I'm going to go ahead and keep this on high. You can also go ahead and choose medium or low, and I recommend using different settings depending on the quality of your images. So if you have images that has a really vast difference in contrast, then you may want to go ahead and choose medium or even low, so it then allows those a little leeway in stitching those images together. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose high, and again we have the pair pre-selection, which is basically how these images are stitched together. For most cases, generic is going to be fine, so I'm going to keep that on generic, and underneath that we also have advanced, and this is basically how dense the generic point cloud data will be when we align the photos. That's not to say that this is going to be the final point cloud data. This is just an initial I guess some sort of pre-visual as to what the final dense mesh will look like. So once we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and press OK, and this will go ahead and start to stitch these images together. Now, depending on the power of your computer, it really depends on how fast this process goes. So instead of waiting for this to complete, which will be done I guess in just a few minutes here, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and we'll see you once that is done. So we are back here. We can see that this has just finished. And if we go ahead and rotate this around, we can now see that we have this initial point cloud data right here in the center, and we also have these blue squares, and these blue squares represent where those cameras were when I had taken those images. And if we go to the left hand panel here, you can see we have this option that says chunk, and it says 57 cameras, and if we extend that, you see it has 57 and then 57. So what this means is that there's 57 photos and 57 of them have been aligned, and if we extend that, we can see that each one of these images, or if we click on each one of these images, we're going to highlight the corresponding camera in the scene here. Now, if for some reason you don't get aligned photos, what you'll get is a little prefix underneath here that will say _NA, I think, which I believe stands for not aligned, and it will also indicate up here, it'll say 57 aligned, and it's how many had not been aligned. So once we have that, the next thing to do is to go ahead and build the dense point mesh data. So to do this, what we need to do is we need to go to Workflow, Build Dense Point Cloud, and from here we have a quality setting, and we can go with lowest, low, medium, high, and ultra high. Now, depending on the quality of your images, the power of your machine, really depends on how long this can take. I have a fairly decent machine, so it doesn't really take too long. I'm going to go with high though. I'm not going to go with ultra high, because this can take around, I guess for 57 images, maybe it can take about half hour, 40 minutes or something like that. So I'm going to go with high, which will take around half of that, so maybe 15-20 minutes for this to compute. Underneath there we have the advanced option, and we have this option that says depth filtering, and this is the filtering out of the background information based on depth information, and so we can choose moderate, mid, and so on and so forth. I generally keep this to moderate. Once we have done that, we can go ahead and press OK, and we can allow this to then go ahead and build the dense point mesh data. what I'm going to do is I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to pause the video, and we'll come back once that has completed. So we are back here. Probably took maybe around 30-45 minutes to generate the point cloud data. So the next thing we'll do is go ahead and build the geometry. So let's go to Workflow, and we're going to go to Build Mesh. And from here, see, we have a bunch of options. We have surface type. We're going to choose arbitrary. So really the difference between these is that this one deals with multiple camera angles, and this one is more sort of aimed if you have a more planar field of cameras. We can choose which mesh we want to use. So we can use the sparse mesh, which was the sparse cloud, which was the original data generated when we had a line of photos, or we can use the dense mesh. So that's what we're going to be doing here. And then after that, we have the face count, so we can have high, medium, low, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and choose high, and again we have some advanced options. So we have the interpolation. So we're going to leave this. I leave this enabled by default. Basically, what this is going to do when this is enabled by default is any holes are going to be filled in the mesh. So it's going to try its best to deal with that. We have exponential, which is a little bit more strict. And then we have disabled. So if you have a mesh that has a open area, then you want to choose disabled. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the enabled, and I'm going to click OK and let this generate the mesh here. So we are back here, and we have this mesh compiled, and as you can see, it looks pretty decent. Everything looks in place. So if we just rotate around, we can see that, yeah, no, everything looks pretty good. Now, if we look, this is what I was saying about the textures. You can see the difference right here, where the textures is going to be projected. Now, this is not the actual final texture. We need to go ahead and project that, but you can see that we have this white, or this contrasting information. So let's go ahead and project the textures, and we can look at the issue which that brings. So we go to Workflow again, and we're going to go to Build Texture, and here we have the mapping mode. Normally set generic. I like to use the ortho photo, which I believe just projects the photograph with a blended overlap. Okay, then we have the blending mode. Mosaic just seems to be fine for most cases, and we have the texture size, and I'm going to use the 4096 preset. Again, we have some advanced options. So we have this enable color correction, and what this is going to do is this is going to color correct all the images as it's projected. So I'm going to leave this on and just see what effect we get. So let's go ahead and click OK, and let's go ahead and wait for the texture to be compiled. So this one should be pretty quick. Should take a few moments. So we have gone ahead and completed the texture compile. So if we have a look around, you can see that it's done a pretty good job with blending those textures in. We will, if we look around, probably see some slight problems with the texture, but nothing too bad. This should work out pretty decent. So the next thing we're going to do is export this and get this ready to go inside a real-time environment. So to do this, we're simply going to go to File, Export Model, and choose Export as OBJ. And so I'm just going to drop this inside this folder where these images are. So I'm going to go ahead there actually and make a new folder. So go to New Folder. I'm going to call this Scan Data, and just call this Tree. So what we need to do is export this, and we're going to import this firstly into Max to set up the orientation and delete any additional data that may be floating around. And then we'll open this up in ZBrush, look at how we can decrease the resolution of the model itself, and then we re-import this back into Max with the lower resolution model, and take and drag the texture information. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm just going to import these. Let's go ahead and import this. And here's what we have. We have this dense mesh here. See, it's pretty dense. And I guess the first thing we want to do is to straighten this out a little. So let's go ahead and deal with that. Let's something about here. I'm not too worried about this being exactly flat. Now, as you can see, we have these pieces of floating geometry. So let's first of all convert this to an editable poly. So let's right click, convert to editable poly. And once we've done that, I'm going to click elements. I'm going to select this entire element here. So the tree and the ground should be 1. And then we can go ahead, invert that and press the delete key. And what that will do is remove any floating geometry. Now, you can do that in PhotoScan. I just tend to find that I normally export it with missing or parts of geometry still floating anyway. So the next thing I want to do here is reset the X-forms. As you can see here, the mesh has this off coordinates. So let's go ahead, reset X-form, and once we've done that, convert this back to an editable poly. So let's convert to editable poly, and that would have reset the transformation data there. So this is essentially what we have. So we have the tree, and it's pretty good. The textures are pretty nice. But what we want to do now is go ahead and clean this up. So we want to decimate the model to something a little bit more manageable, and we want to get a version of this tree that is ready to be used inside a real-time environment. So select this. I'm going to go to export, export selected, and all I'm going to do is just overwrite the other file. So let's change this to an OBJ. And overwrite this. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the preset to ZBrush, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up ZBrush, and we can start to clean this up. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are here inside ZBrush. Let's go ahead and import our file. So let's go ahead and use import, and let's find that data. So let's go ahead and import the tree. Let's drag this into our scene. I'm going to press the T to enter the transformation mode. And so you can see this is the actual data we have here. I'm going to go ahead and change the material. I'm going to also import the texture. So let's go ahead and choose import, and let's import this. Now, whenever you import texture into ZBrush, it needs to be flipped upside down. So let's go ahead and flip that, and then we can go ahead, go to textures. Let's go texture map, and we can use that texture. So now you can see we have the tree and the texture information inside here. So what we want to do now is just start to erase and remove parts of the mesh. So if I hold the left control, I can paint a mask. So I'm just going to quickly paint a mask selection. And all I want to do is just select around the tree at first. So we can go ahead and select something along these lines. And once we've done that, let's go under visibility. So we have visibility over here. I'm going to click this hide. So this will, oops, we want to undo that actually. We want to go ahead and choose masking, and we're going to inverse this. Then we can go under and choose visibility and hide. And we just want to keep doing this. So let's keep masking off information here. And I'm going to get a little closer, and let's just inverse this and choose hide. And so what you want to do now is reduce the size of the brush, and let's just start to paint the rest of the terrain here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video right here, and all I'm going to do is go around and just only paint the ground here, leaving the tree intact, and I'll go ahead and hide it, and once we've done that we'll come back. So we are back here. I have painted the mask. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just remove the texture information for a moment and just make sure that everything looks fine. So you can see that I have these few extra flow in pieces, and it looks like I could probably get away with masking a little bit more off here. And this is just going to help with the overall mask to make sure that there is no floating geometry that is not required. So let's just quickly go ahead and clean this up. And I'm going to paint this off here too. And I think I'll do this for the entire mesh here on the corners, so we get something a little smoother. So let's see, I think that's about it. There we go, we can paint this off and paint this, and let's just turn this back on for a minute. Yep, so we need to paint that out. Okay, I think we're done here. Let's turn the texture back on. Yeah, we're about done. So you can see here I have this grass. Some parts of it I've left some of the grass on. That's just because that's part of the tree. So once we have that, let me just turn the texture off again. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that inverse and then hide the geometry. So let's just, there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the visibility. Let's see, where is it? Let's go to masking, inverse, visibility, hide. This gives us only the tree. Now we can scroll all the way up, extend geometry. Scroll down to where it says, we don't want Z, where it says modify topology, and we're going to choose the delete hidden. This will remove all the extra data. So this is all we have left now. So once we got that, if we go back down here and we go back to the texture, we can reapply our texture for the remainder of the video here. Now you can see here I have a piece of flowing geometry, so let's just go ahead and choose that visibility, inverse, mask, hide, geometry, delete hidden. There we go. So what we want to do now is look at how we can lower the resolution of this model. So there's a few ways we can do this. The first one is we can totally go ahead and retopologize this. But for me, that's a little wouldn't really be worth the time for an asset like this. So what we can do is we can go ahead and use this ZRematch. So this is a new feature of ZBrush, and what you can do is you can set the amount of polygon or the target polygons here, and once you've done that, you click this ZRematch, and ZBrush will go ahead and process the mesh and deliver a lower poly version of this model. Now this is different to the reconstruct subdivide, as the ZRematch will attempt to have a topological flow so it won't just be all triangles. So if we go ahead, sorry, it won't just be all quads. If we go ahead after the ZRematch and we go ahead and choose topology, you can see that what it actually does is it tries to retain some topological information and reconstruct that in a more constructive way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ZBrush this with a lower value, and the idea is I want to get this to a point where it looks pretty good, but I'm not really losing much of the data. So I think about here is going to be great. So you see, as we move around, I'm still retaining a lot of the detail. Maybe I can increase this just a little bit, just to bring back some of the detail here in the back. And there's a whole bunch of different options here. You can go ahead and explore this and get different results. But for what we're doing, I think this is going to be fine. And because this is ZRematch to quads too, what we can also do is go ahead and fix the top where it has an opening. So you can see here it still has that opening, but we can go ahead and fix that in an external package. So I guess this is what we're going to be dealing with. It looks it's pretty good. Let's see, I just want to increase this just a little bit, and let's just ZRematch for a moment and see what we get. Okay, so I think, yeah, no, this is going to be fine. So once we have that, what we can do is we can go to export. So I'm going to go to export, and oh, that's low. And oh, looks like I'm opening. I'll wait to export one. Export. Tree low. Now if you want to, you could also go in here and use the UV master and re-export that. So or we can do like max. I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to re-export this. I'm going to use the UV master here. I think it's going to be a lot easier. So the UV master is going to allow us to create some UVs for this. So let's just extend the tools, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Z plugins. You can see we have the Z master. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to dock this to the bottom here. Just makes it a little easier to access. I'm going to click UV master, and we're going to choose the enable, and let's go ahead and choose protect. And what the protect does is it says that we want to retain the UV information here. So let's go ahead and just paint all this red. And then the other button, the opposite button, the attract, is going to say we want to attract seams along this particular or at this particular location. Now for me that's going to be, let's see, let's have a look at this model. So I think for me that's going to be somewhere around the back here. So perhaps, yeah, so somewhere about here I think it's going to be fine. So this is just where there's going to be more of a smoother transition in the polygons in the topology. I don't want these to occur where the meshes has more detail. Otherwise, it may make the seams visible. Now, you don't have to be too precise. You just got to have a generalization. You can see here that I haven't really painted this red, and this doesn't really follow in a straight line. But once we've done that, what we can do is we can go ahead and click this button that says unwrap, and if we go ahead and click the flatten button, it's going to give us a view of the UVs here. So let's unflatten this, and let's go ahead and re-export this. So let's use export, and let's just override the mesh. Okay, so once we've done that, we need to go ahead and load back into Max. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are back here inside Max, and what we want to do is we want to produce the normal information as well as the color maps. So we're going to go to File, Import, and we're going to import that low poly version. And let's just go ahead and choose Import. Let's choose Skip and press Close. And you can see what it does is it lines this up pretty well. Okay, so this is pretty nice. So let's press the M key to go to the materials editor, and let's choose material. I'm going to choose pick from object, and I'm going to pick this ground plane, and I'm going to set the self illumination up to 100%. Okay, and this just means that we are able to attain the diffuse texture information. So we have our low poly model selected. Let's just invert the selection for a moment and choose hide selection, and let's just select our tree, and just making sure that there's no separate places now, no separate pieces, sorry. Now we have the top of the tree which is open, that's fine, we can fix that later. Okay, so let's go ahead and just give this a name. So I'm going to just call this tree low. Let's unhide everything, and let's press M. Let's bring up materials editor, and let's just assign a basic material. So what we want to do is we're going to go to render to texture. And choose enable. Now before we do this, actually we could, if we'd like, go ahead and let's just select this dense mesh here. Choose high selection. Now if we wanted to, we could go ahead at this particular point and do some cleanup on the model here, so it's not so rigid like this. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave this how it is for now. Okay, so don't you know, don't just follow this completely, I guess. If you want to go ahead and, you know, clean this up, then feel free. So I'm going to go add, and I'm going to choose diffuse. I'm going to choose add elements, and we want to choose an output folder. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the same folder I've been using. So let's go ahead and put this in the scan data, and I'm going to call this diffuse. And I'm going to give this a file format tagger. Press OK, and this original texture was 4096 by 4096, so we can go ahead and add that in here. So we're going to type 4096 by 4096. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. Okay, now let's see, let's go ahead, and we didn't pick our high poly mesh, so we need to click this pick button, and we're going to go ahead and press Ctrl A to select everything, and you see we get this really crazy cage. So we're just going to choose to reset this, and we're going to push this out maybe about there. Once we've done that, we can go to the options, we can go to setup, and we can look at adding some quality settings. So I'm going to choose enable global super sampler. Should be fine. I'm going to leave this ray mist check on for now. So when we click render, we can see if there's any issues in the texture. So you can see that we have this red. So this means that the cage is not large enough. So that's fine. All we've got to do is increase the projection of the cage. We don't want to push this too far. If it gets to that point, then what we'll have to do is export the cage and manually modify it. But I think we can just get away in this particular case by just increasing the size of the cage here. So let's just wait for this to finish. I cannot close this, otherwise it'll still continue to bake. I wish there was a cancel button for Macs, to stop baking, but there isn't one. So let's see. What we can do actually is scroll down here and set this to a lower resolution. This will give us a quicker bake. And we can increase the amount, the push amount. So let's go something like this and choose render. Let's go to the right, let's choose yes. Let's see. Okay, so this gives us a much better result. We see we have a slight issue there, but I'm not too worried about that. That's something we could fix. Maybe just increase it once more. Try that again. Choose override. So it's getting smaller. So let's go ahead and try one last time. Okay, so we're getting there. So this is just trial and error. Keep going through, see what. There we go. So now we have all that information removed. So we can go ahead and set the final texture to the larger version. Choose render. Choose override, and I'll pause the video and we'll come back once that's completed. So we're back here. The texture information has been fully baked, and if we zoom in here, we can see that it's pretty nicely detailed. So the next thing we'll do is we want to go ahead and choose delete and choose add, and this time we want to go ahead and add a normal map. So let's go ahead and choose normal map. I'm going to press Ctrl A to select everything. Alright, so just there we go, press M, and it's going to assign a blank material to both of these. And once we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and choose 4098 by 4098. We need to go ahead and give this a new name, so let's just save this into that folder. So let's go with normal, and we can go ahead and choose save. Let's just set this to be a tagger, and we can go ahead and render. And go. Now at this point we can also go ahead and bake out a bunch of other information. So we can go ahead and bake out ambient occlusions and cavity maps and all those other textures, all those other types of cool textures. And I'm going to do that. Hopefully you get the idea of how this is done. So you don't need to go too much in detail with this. So the normal map is nearly done now. We do get this bug sometimes. I find that you generally get this whenever you bake a different texture first. So in this case we baked a diffuse texture. So this doesn't really show the normal map texture inside the window here, which is fine. I know that this is going to be baked out properly. So let's see, we can close this, and what we can do now is we can take this high resolution model, height selection, and we can go ahead and assign our materials list. So I'm going to press the M key, and let's go ahead and load those textures. So let's go ahead and choose diffuse, just open. We can assign this. So you see we have the texture information. This is pretty cool. So it looks just like the same, or just looks the same as the previous mesh, and we can go ahead, choose bump, set this to 100. We can go ahead, add a normal bump and normal map, and we can go ahead and apply our normal. So you can see that the normal map is working great too. Now we can go ahead and choose real time inside here, but it's probably best to have a pre-visualization in a much better program. So I'm going to open up Marmoset Toolbox, and we will open up the mesh and see what it looks like inside there. So we're here inside Marmoset, and let's go ahead and go to File. Let's import our model, so let's go import mesh. And let's import our low poly. So let's go ahead and import this. Okay, so we see we have our model inside here. So we want to go ahead and assign our material. So let's go ahead, select our material. We have a normal map, so we can go ahead and choose normal. And as you can see, we have all this normal information on the tree. It's pretty cool. We can now go ahead and add a albedo map, which is essentially the diffuse map. Let's go ahead and bring this in. It's pretty cool. And what we need to do now is go ahead and just fine tune some of these settings, so we can bring the gloss down. Trees are not very glossy. We can, let's see, we also need to decrease the gloss. There we go, something like this. And we need to decrease the intensity. And so this is essentially what we're getting so far. Let's go ahead and decrease the reflectivity. And let's see. I guess we could go ahead change the sky a little. Something a little more suiting. Let's see. Let's go with this. Let's see if it makes a difference if we flip the... So we can see we need to flip the Y, so we get that detail back. So you see the no detail, now we get a stronger detail. This is, I guess, due to the coordinates. Okay, so this is our final tree data. Okay, so we could, if we'd like to, go ahead and export this for a game engine. We could also fix the top, so we could add, or we could cap this off and add a top to this. But yeah, for now, I mean, this is pretty decent. It's a nice, dense, a nice looking tree trunk. There wasn't much to this. So yeah, I mean, that's the workflow. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.